But the Browns have drafted some first-round linemen over the years. There's been some good, bad. I don't know about ugly, but good and bad. They had a pretty good stretch from 2007 to 2014. Haven't done so well since 2015. Let's take a look at the good here as far as picking offensive linemen. You put that group together, you're going to have, if they ever play together, that would be one of the great offensive lines of all time. Joe Thomas, Alex-Mack, Mitchell-Schwartz, and Joel-Bitonio, 4 out of the 5. The bad continues as we take a look at cam-erving, Shon-Coleman, and Austin-Corbett. And that's just from 2015. And round 1, round 2, 3, and round 2 in that. Cam-erving was the 19th pick in the draft. People in Kansas City would say, what are you complaining about? He's pretty good. So, well, he did turn out pretty good. Just shows.
Yeah, not too bad.
Yeah.
You know, the misnomer about the Browns' offensive line, you know, when they've gone through years where they just haven't been very good, you know, people bang the table and say, they've got to draft, you know, offensive linemen higher in the draft. Well, that list just showed it there, Les. That wasn't the problem. I mean, they were drafting pretty high draft pick, pretty high tackles and guards and centers, drafting them in the first, second, and third round for a number of years now. So whatever it was, it really wasn't that. It's not like they were taking a bunch of street free agents and throwing them together and seeing where they got. So hopefully this time with the talent that's already there, with a high pick, if they use that number 10 pick, and with Bill Callahan here, and with maybe the chance that he stays for a few years, they'll have that continuity that every team is looking for.
You know, at one point, Andrew Berry said, well, right tackles and left tackles, they're interchangeable. He didn't say interchangeable, but I think he meant it. Do you subscribe to that? If you're looking at a lineman who played on the right side, do you think a young draftee, all of a sudden you can throw him on the left and say, go protect the backside of our quarterback?
Well, not initially, for sure. You know, I think it's going to be a transition for anybody in the league to make that switch, let alone a guy coming right out of college. I don't trust much of what I hear from, not just Andrew Berry, I'm just saying any of these GMs at this time of year, because you just don't know what they're, year after year we do this, we parse everything that they say leading up to drafts, and then they do something that's totally different than what they said. So I'm just, you know, kind of interested to see where they go with it. I think they tried to shore up the right side in free agency for a reason. I think they felt they could do it more cheaply than to sign a big, you know, name left tackle like Trent Williams. And I think they're going to go for their, you know, franchise left tackle in this draft. I'll be surprised if they don't.
Do you think that being the youngest GM in the league and in the league's history, that Andrew Berry's going to want to make a mark here? And you don't make a mark for yourself if you just go and pick the best guy on the board who happens to be a position that you need. Do you think he can hold himself back from saying, well, I think if I trade up and trade down and move over here and do this, that I'll let the league know that almost like Lewis, or not Lewis, Hugh Jackson, almost like he's saying, Hugh Jackson's here, baby. Do you see that in Andrew Berry at all?
Doesn't strike me as that kind of guy. Plus, I think he certainly is a guy who embraces the Paul D. Podesta side of the building. So I think whatever decision he makes as a GM in this draft is going to be pretty well founded and supported by the other side of the building, if that's what we want to call it. So I really would be surprised if he goes rogue to try to prove a point. He just doesn't strike me as that kind of personality.
If you talk about the other side of the building, how much analytics take place when you have, let's say your choice is the best tackle available, or if Simmons is still available, get him. Is that analytics, or is that just gut feeling? Is that just football players?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, you certainly what's happened here in the past is they've never sold each other on their approach. So what we've had is Hugh Jackson, you know, getting an opinion, getting a player that he wants. Before that, we had, you know, Ray Farmer would give his head coach one pick, or he'd take the other pick. You know, it just has not been a harmonious situation. And I think this has a chance to be that. So no one should think for a second that this coaching staff doesn't have his antenna out for the fact that analytics has really driven the transition from coaches this year. And I think coaching staffs all come in here thinking the same thing. If we win, we'll get more, clout, and we'll get to be the guy who decides, in certain situations who the player is. And they're willing to, during the interview period, they're willing to embrace the idea of analytics because that's the only way they're going to get the job.
Sure.
But I think Stefanski's willing to let it, be part of what they do. And this coaching staff is willing to listen to an extent, but they still want football players that they believe in that may not check all the boxes on an analytics or a pro football focus side.
Right. Well, it's not fair, and I think I'm guilty of it, or the show is guilty of it, that we say, well, the Browns did this in whatever year, and they did that in whatever year. It's a totally new regime here. The fact that they were orange helmets that the players were wearing doesn't give you the excuse that, the last three regimes didn't do it right either.
Yeah, and I think specifically that pertains to Andrew Berry. I don't think it's fair to throw him into a pool of, if you're an anti-Sashi Brown believer, I don't think it's really fair to throw him into that. He wasn't in a position of a decision-making position of power here. And the other part of that is that they were so clearly trying to, I wouldn't say tank because that brings up a whole nother discussion, but I would say they were so clearly trying to amass draft pick capital that they were not as interested in bringing in the best players in each draft, and the same in free agency. So I just don't think, I think starting now, it's more than fair to judge Andrew Berry on what he's doing, regardless of whether Paul DePodesta is supporting it or not supporting it. This is his team now, and he should be judged that way.